The illusion of free will. It is a notion that the choices we make from the moment we open our eyes to the moment we close them are entirely our own, a product of our conscious mind, our sovereign self. But neuroscience and psychology suggest a different story, a story not of a commander but of a narrator. Consider a simple choice you might make tomorrow: what to have for breakfast, tea or coffee. It feels like a free decision, doesn't it? A tiny exercise of your will. But now let's pull back the curtain. That choice was likely shaped by a million factors you did not consciously choose. The gentle pull of a childhood memory, the scent of a parent's morning brew, the lingering effect of an advertisement you barely noticed, the specific wiring of your taste buds determined by your genetics, the level of a neurotransmitter like adenosine in your brain upon waking, a conversation you had yesterday that primed you for a feeling of comfort or alertness. Your conscious mind, the you that you hear thinking right now, did not orchestrate this symphony of influences. It merely observed the result, and then it did something fascinating. It created a reason, a story. I chose coffee because I need the energy today. A perfectly logical, yet ultimately fictional explanation for a decision that was already made by the intricate, unconscious machinery of your being. You are not a dictator issuing commands from a throne in your skull. You are more like a dedicated biographer, living inside a fascinating autonomous entity. You experience its thoughts, its feelings, its actions, and your job is to weave them into a coherent narrative, a story of a self that has agency and control. This illusion is not a flaw. It is a feature, a necessary one. It gives our lives a sense of continuity, of meaning, of responsibility. But there is a profound relaxation in this thought that every worry about making the perfect choice, every anxiety over a path not taken, every regret that whispers, "You should have chosen differently," is based on a story. The outcome was always going to be the outcome, given the infinite chain of causes and effects that led to that singular moment. You are not failing to steer the ship. You are simply along for the ride, observing the ocean, the weather, the stars. Your body is a vessel, sailing on currents of biology, history, and circumstance. Your conscious mind gets to enjoy the view and tell the tale. So release the wheel. There never was a wheel to hold. There is only the journey, the inputs and outputs, the beautiful, predictable, and complex system that is you. Your choices are not yours, and in that, there is a strange and ultimate freedom. Freedom from the burden of absolute control. You can simply be, a witness to the incredible automation of your existence. Let the need to choose dissolve. Everything is already as it is, and it is all unfolding exactly as it should. The bystander effect. It is the curious psychological phenomenon where a person is less likely to offer help to another when other people are present. The responsibility to act does not feel like it belongs to any one individual, but is instead diffused throughout the crowd. A shared silence settles over the group, and in that quiet inaction feels like the most natural response. Imagine a busy city street. A person stumbles. For a single suspended moment, there is no movement. Each person in the crowd glances, not first at the person who needs help, but at the faces of those around them. They are searching for a social cue, a signal that confirms what they are seeing and instructs them on how to respond. They are calibrating their reaction to the reactions of others. In that moment of shared hesitation, the individual urge to help is quieted, soothed by the collective stillness. It is not a conscious decision to ignore, but a subconscious alignment with the perceived norm of the group. This diffusion of responsibility creates a powerful illusion. The burden of action feels lighter because it is distributed, shared among so many anonymous others. Surely someone else is more qualified. Someone else will step forward. Someone else has already called for help. The mind, seeking the path of least resistance, accepts these quiet rationalizations. It is easier to believe that help is already on its way than to break the unspoken agreement of inaction, to step out of the crowd and become singular and responsible. Yet understanding this mechanism can be a source of quiet comfort. It reveals that our inaction is rarely born of apathy or a coldness of heart. It is instead a predictable function of our social wiring. We are deeply attuned to one another, our instincts shaped by the presence of the group. This effect shows us that we are not isolated decision makers, but interconnected beings, our behaviors subtly and constantly influenced by the invisible field of those around us. So if you have ever wondered why no one stepped forward, why you yourself may have hesitated, know that it was not a failure of character, but a function of human nature. The crowd has a gravity all its own, a gentle pull toward conformity and observation. To act is to swim against that current. But this knowledge also gives us a gentle power. By simply being aware of this tendency, we can soften its hold. We can recognize the initial hesitation for what it is, a psychological reflex, not a final answer. We can give ourselves permission to be the one who breaks the silence, not with force, but with a quiet decision to see the individual, not the crowd. And in doing so, we dissolve the illusion of shared responsibility and reconnect with our own innate capacity to offer care. The responsibility was never truly diffused. It was only waiting for someone to gently, quietly claim it. The Dunning-Kruger effect. It is the cognitive bias where a person's lack of knowledge or skill in a particular area leads them to overestimate their own competence. In its quiet paradox, the skills needed to be truly good at something are the very same skills needed to accurately recognize how much one still has to learn. Without them, a person remains not only unskilled, but also unaware of their own lack of skill, comfortably adrift in a sea of unfounded confidence. Consider the novice who picks up a complex instrument for the very first time. After producing a few simple shaky notes, a feeling of understanding can quietly bloom. The immense, decades-long journey of mastery that lies ahead is invisible to them, hidden behind a curtain they do not yet know how to draw back. Their limited experience is their entire world, and within that small world they feel quite accomplished. This is not arrogance. It is a simple and predictable failure of perspective. The mind has no reference point for true expertise, so it mistakenly interprets the first step of the journey as being much closer to the destination. Conversely, the true expert often moves in the opposite direction. Their deep knowledge has revealed to them the vast and intricate expanse of all they do not know. They are acutely aware of the nuances, the exceptions, the endless subtleties of their craft. This expansive understanding can foster a sense of humility, sometimes even a feeling of being an imposter, as they compare their own knowledge to the idealized complete mastery they envision. Their confidence is not lost, but it becomes tempered, refined by an awareness of complexity. This is not a story of foolishness versus intelligence. It is a universal story of metacognition, the ability to think about our own thinking. We are all, in some domain of our lives, the novice who cannot yet see the full scope of the mountain we have just begun to climb. The effect is a gentle reminder of the quiet gaps in our self-awareness, gaps that are an inevitable part of the human learning process. There is a strange comfort in this. It means that moments of self-doubt, those feelings of uncertainty in a complex world, are not signs of failure. They are, in fact, markers of growing understanding. They are the evidence that you have learned enough to see the boundaries of your own knowledge. That initial blissful confidence was merely the starting gift, the necessary fuel to begin the journey before the true scale of the endeavor could be perceived. So, when you encounter certainty in yourself or in others, you can meet it with a soft understanding. See it not as a fixed state, but as a point on a long and natural curve of learning. Embrace the humility that comes with not knowing, for it is the clearest sign that you are growing. The path to wisdom is not about acquiring all the answers, but about becoming more intimately and peacefully acquainted with the beautiful, endless nature of the questions. The fundamental attribution error. It is our mind's quiet, persistent tendency to explain the behavior of others by leaning on their character, their internal essence, while explaining our own behavior by pointing to the external circumstances pressing upon us. When someone else acts, we see a reflection of their core self. When we act, we feel the weight of the situation. This is not a conscious choice, but a default setting of our perception, a lens through which we view the world and each other. Imagine a driver suddenly cuts you off on the highway. The immediate instinctual story your mind writes is one of character. That person is reckless. They are impatient. They are inconsiderate. The narrative is clean, simple, and internal to them. Now recall a time when you have done the very same thing. Your story is not one of character, but of context. I had to swerve to avoid something in the road. I didn't see them in my blind spot. I'm late for something terribly important. Your story is complex, detailed, and focused on the external pressures that shaped your momentary action. We are the heroes of our own narratives, and we feel the full force of the winds that push us this way and that. We have access to the entire library of our own context, our fears, our urgent deadlines, our private worries. For others, we see only a single page of their story, a snapshot of behavior isolated from the vast novel of their life. And so we judge that page as if it defines the entire book. This error is not a moral failing. It is a cognitive shortcut, a way for our minds to conserve energy in a complex social world. It is easier to label a behavior as stemming from a fixed personality than to undertake the exhausting work of imagining the infinite web of circumstances that might be influencing a stranger's life at any given moment. Yet understanding this brings a profound sense of peace. It invites us to soften our judgments, to release the sharp edges of blame we so quickly direct at others. That curt cashier is not inherently rude. Perhaps they are exhausted from a double shift or worried about a sick child. The colleague who missed a deadline is not necessarily incompetent. They may be navigating a personal crisis unseen by anyone else. This awareness also offers a gentle kindness toward ourselves. It allows us to see that the world is not constantly judging our character by our every misstep. They are likely as we are, attributing our actions to the situation just as we do for ourselves. We are all, in a way, walking through our own storms, while often only seeing the calm weather in others. So we can learn to hold our interpretations lightly. We can pause, and in that pause, invite a more generous story. We can replace the question, "What is wrong with that person?" with the quieter, more curious question, "What might they be going through?" This shifts the weight from judgment to understanding, from isolation to connection. It is a reminder that we are all, always, more than a single action. We are a collection of moments shaped by contexts, seen and unseen, and in that shared human experience, there is endless room for grace. The Lucifer effect. It is the psychological phenomenon that explores how ordinary, good people can be led to commit acts of astonishing cruelty, not because of an inherent evil within them, but through the subtle, yet powerful influence of a corrupted system or situation. It suggests that the line between good and evil is not fixed and impermeable, but rather a permeable boundary that most anyone can cross under the right set of social and systemic pressures. Imagine a gentle, kind-hearted person, someone who helps neighbors and is thoughtful toward animals. Now place this same individual within a rigid structure, a system that grants them authority over others, provides them with a set of rules that justify harsh actions, and offers a compelling ideology that frames those actions as being for a greater good. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the situation begins to reshape their behavior, the uniform they wear, the role they are assigned, the approval of their peers. These external factors become stronger guides for action than their internal moral compass. They are not transformed into a monster. They are simply acting in a way that their new environment defines as normal, even commendable. This is not about a few bad apples. It is about the power of the barrel, the surrounding context that can, under the right conditions, reshape anyone. The human mind has a profound and often unsettling capacity for conformity. We have a deep-seated need to belong, to follow the rules of our tribe, and to obey perceived legitimate authority. This wiring was essential for our survival as a social species, but it can also be harnessed to lead us into darkness, all while we believe we are serving the light. The most harmful acts are often committed not by those raging against the system, but by those who are simply dutifully following its rules. Understanding this can be strangely liberating. It removes the simplistic notion of evil as a monstrous force that only inhabits others. It places the capacity for both good and ill within the realm of the ordinary, within all of us. This is not a cause for fear, but for profounder self-awareness and humility. It means we must be gentle in our judgment of others, for we can never be entirely certain how we would behave if placed in their exact situation under the same immense pressures. It also empowers us. By recognizing the immense power of situational forces, we can learn to question them. We can learn to listen more closely to the quiet voice of our internal compass, especially when the crowd is cheering in the opposite direction. We can design systems that nurture our humanity rather than corrupt it. The lesson of the Lucifer effect is ultimately a compassionate one. It tells us that morality is not a fortress we are born inside, but a path we walk every day, and the weather and the terrain matter immensely. It encourages us to look beyond individual character to the surrounding environment, to create a world where it is easier for people to be good. It is a reminder that our greatest protection against darkness is not in believing ourselves to be inherently good, but in understanding the subtle forces that can lead anyone astray, and in building a society that guards against them. The Truman Show Delusion. It is the persistent, unsettling feeling that one's life is not entirely real, but an elaborate performance staged for the entertainment of unseen observers. That the people around you are actors, the events carefully scripted, and the world itself a meticulously constructed set. While a clinical delusion is rare, the underlying sensation, a faint whisper of unreality, a subtle questioning of the authenticity of experience, is a curious thread in the fabric of modern consciousness. Consider for a moment the feeling of being watched, not necessarily in a paranoid way, but in the gentle, lingering awareness that you are a character in a story, that your triumphs and failures are being witnessed, your choices judged, your narrative arc followed. This sensation is amplified in a world of social media, where we curate our lives into highlight reels and present a version of ourselves to a digital audience. The line between living an experience and performing it for others becomes softly blurred. We are both the star and the director of our own show, and sometimes we can forget which role we are truly in. This delusion, in its extreme form, is a distortion of a very human need, the need for our lives to matter, to have meaning and purpose. The idea that you are the central character in a grand production, however manipulative, is ultimately a story of significance. It is a desperate, fractured narrative created by a mind seeking to explain feelings of isolation or alienation by making them purposeful. Even persecution is preferable to the terrifying thought of indifference, that no one is watching at all. But there is a softer, more common version of this that many might recognize: the occasional sense of detachment, as if you are floating slightly outside yourself, observing your own actions, the déjà vu that feels a little too precise, the strange coincidence that seems a little too staged. These are not signs of a breaking mind, but rather of a mind that is deeply aware of its own storytelling nature. We are, all of us, the narrators of our own lives. We weave the disparate events of our days into a coherent plot. It is a small step from that natural narration to the faint, dreamlike suspicion that there might be another, larger narrator. There is a peculiar comfort in this understanding. It allows you to observe these feelings of unreality, not with fear, but with curiosity, to see them as a testament to your mind's creativity, its desire for order and meaning. You can acknowledge the feeling that you are on camera and then gently let it go, like watching a strange cloud drift across the sky of your mind. It invites you to reconnect with the tangible, the unscripted, the authentic, the weight of a book in your hands, the taste of cool water, the unplanned, messy laughter between friends that no director could ever hope to choreograph. These are the anchors to reality, the reminders that the most profound moments are often the ones that are not performed, but simply lived. So if you have ever felt, for a fleeting second, that the world might be a stage, know that you are not alone. It is merely your mind's ancient story-drunk way of grappling with the beautiful, bewildering mystery of being. You are both the audience and the actor in the theater of your own consciousness, and the show, beautifully, imperfectly, and entirely your own, goes on. Semantic satiation. It is the curious psychological occurrence where a word, through rapid and sustained repetition, momentarily loses its meaning. It dissolves on the tongue, becoming a mere collection of strange sounds, a hollow shell stripped of its concept. A familiar term transforms into something abstract and foreign, leaving the mind adrift in a quiet sea of phonetic puzzle pieces. Consider a simple word: plate. Say it once, and the mind instantly conjures the image: a flat, round dish from which we eat. But now repeat it: plate, 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 plate. With each repetition, the connection between the sound and the meaning stretches. Then phrase: the hard P, the soft L, the final T. These become mere vibrations, a rhythmic noise. The concept at once anchored simply floats away, leaving you contemplating not a dish, but a peculiar empty syllable. The word becomes an object in itself, divorced from the thing it represents. This is not a malfunction of the mind, but a fascinating glimpse into its inner workings. It reveals the delicate and dynamic nature of how we assign significance. Our brain does not store words as immutable, meaning-filled stones. Instead, it operates through a system of neural pathways, connections that fire between the sound of a word and the vast network of associations it holds. When we repeat a word rapidly, we are essentially overstimulating that specific pathway. The neurons involved become temporarily fatigued. They fire less intensely. The vibrant connection fades to a dull hum, and the meaning disconnects. There is a gentle lesson in this momentary breakdown. It shows us that meaning is not an inherent property locked within a word, but a fragile agreement, a constant act of creation and recognition performed by our consciousness. It is a relationship, and like any relationship, it can be paused, examined, and appreciated anew once it returns. So the next time you find yourself lost in the sound of a word, detached from its sense, do not struggle. Lean into the quiet absurdity of it. Observe the strange shape of the syllables in your mouth. Listen to the music of the meaningless sound. It is a rare opportunity to witness the machinery of your own thought, to see the seam between the symbol and the symbolized. And then when you release the repetition, when you allow the word to rest, you can witness the meaning flow back into it. It returns like a tide, refreshing the connection, making the familiar concept feel somehow new again. This return is a small, quiet miracle of cognition. It is a reminder that our grasp on the world is held through these intricate living networks of association, and that even the most solid-seeming concepts are sustained by a gentle, constant, and recoverable magic. The Mandela effect. It is a peculiar and shared false memory, a collective misremembering of a specific detail or event that feels undeniably true to a large number of people. It is named for the widespread recollection that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, a memory so vivid for so many that the news of his actual death in 2013 came as a profound and disorienting shock. This phenomenon is not about simple forgetfulness. It is about the eerie confidence in a reality that, according to verifiable evidence, never actually existed. Consider the famous line from the film Star Wars. The memory is clear, distinct. Darth Vader turns to Luke Skywalker and says, "Luke, I am your father." Yet if you were to watch the scene now, you would hear the actual line, "No, I am your father." There is no Luke. Our minds, in their desire for narrative clarity and direct address, inserted the name, smoothing the dialogue into the more personal and dramatic version we all seem to share. Or think of the Berenstain Bears. For countless individuals, the memory is certain. It was always spelled Berenstein. But the books, the shows, the historical record all show the unmistakable A. Berenstain. The E version feels correct in a deep, almost visceral way, creating a faint but persistent sense of cognitive dissonance. This effect reveals something fundamental and gentle about the architecture of human memory. Our minds are not perfect recording devices, capturing events with impartial accuracy. We are storytellers. Our memories are not fixed snapshots, but living narratives, constantly being edited, refined, and reshaped each time we recall them. We unconsciously fill in gaps with logical assumptions, align details with our existing schemas, and weave in influences from other sources. Over time, the edited story becomes the truth in our minds. When these individual edits are shared across a culture, perhaps sparked by a common misprint, a widespread pop culture parody, or a simple logical error, a collective false memory is born. There is a strange comfort in the Mandela effect. It is a humble reminder that our perception of reality is a constructed tapestry, woven together from imperfect threads of experience, suggestion, and communal storytelling. It shows us that we are not isolated individuals, experiencing the world in perfect isolation, but are deeply interconnected, our inner worlds shaped by a shared cultural consciousness. It invites us to hold our memories a little more lightly, to appreciate them not as infallible records, but as the evolving stories that shape our identity. The slight uncertainty it introduces is not a threat, but a gentle nudge toward curiosity and openness. It reminds us that reality is a consensus, and that our individual truths are beautiful, fragile, and wonderfully intertwined with the truths of others. In the end, the Mandela effect is not an error of the mind, but a feature of its collaborative narrative nature. We are all writing the story together, and sometimes we misremember the same line. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. It is the peculiar experience of learning something new, a word, a name, a concept, an obscure fact, and then, seemingly moments later, encountering it again everywhere. It feels less like a coincidence and more like a subtle shift in the fabric of reality, as if this new piece of information has suddenly been woven into the pattern of your daily life. The world, it seems, has conspired to bring this one thing to your attention again and again. You might hear the name of a rare botanical species in a documentary. The next day, you notice it in a novel you're reading. Later that week, a friend will mention it in passing. The feeling is unmistakable. This thing has suddenly proliferated, but the truth is far more calming. The thing itself has not changed its frequency in the world. What has changed is your awareness of it. Your mind, having been freshly primed with this new information, now has a heightened sensitivity to it. It is like a newly tuned receiver, suddenly able to pick up a frequency that was always broadcasting, but which you had previously filtered out as background noise. This phenomenon is a gentle demonstration of your brain's efficiency to avoid being overwhelmed by the infinite stimuli of the world. It operates with a powerful selective attention filter. It decides what is relevant based on what you already know and what you have recently encountered. Once a new word or concept is deemed relevant, tagged as important by the act of learning it, the filter adjusts. It allows that specific information to pass through to your conscious awareness, where it then appears to be astonishingly prevalent. There is a deep comfort in this process. It reveals that the universe is not suddenly converging on a single point, but that your perception of it is simply expanding. Each time this happens, it is a small reminder that your mind is actively engaged with the world, curating your experience, making connections. It is a sign of a learning, growing consciousness. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon transforms the mundane into the mildly miraculous. It turns a simple coincidence into a personal signpost, highlighting the endless threads of information that constantly surround us. It suggests that the world is far richer and more detailed than we ordinarily perceive, and that with just a little new knowledge, we can tune into a different layer of reality. So the next time you experience this sudden frequency, do not see it as a strange quirk of fate. See it instead as a quiet conversation between your mind and the world. Your consciousness learned a new word, and the universe is simply answering. It is confirming your curiosity, rewarding your attention, and inviting you to notice even more. It is a reminder that wonder is always available, not because the world changes, but because our ability to see it does. The paradox of choice. It is the counterintuitive idea that while we believe more options grant us greater freedom and satisfaction, an overabundance of choices can instead lead to anxiety, paralysis, and a deeper sense of dissatisfaction. In our modern world, we are presented with a staggering array of decisions, from the seemingly trivial, dozens of varieties of jam, hundreds of streaming shows, to the profoundly life-altering career paths, retirement plans. This vast menu of possibilities, rather than liberating us, can become a source of quiet burden. Imagine standing before a shelf of 100 different types of toothpaste: whitening, tartar control, sensitivity protection, natural formulas, myriad flavors. The intention is to offer something for everyone, to ensure you find the perfect match. But the process often has the opposite effect. The cognitive load of comparing so many options is heavy. Each variable must be weighed against the others. A fear emerges, the fear of missing out on a better option, of making the wrong choice. This is the weight of opportunity cost, the lingering ghost of all the paths not taken. After the choice is finally made, doubt often settles in. With so many alternatives left unchosen, it becomes easy to imagine that one of them might have been superior. This imagined perfection undermines the satisfaction with the perfectly good choice we have in our hand. We assume that more options will lead to better outcomes and greater happiness, but psychological research suggests that after a certain point, the relationship reverses. A curated selection of 5 or 6 jams will lead to more purchases and happier customers than a table of 30, which overwhelms and leads people to walk away, choosing nothing at all. The energy required to decide depletes us, and the constant self-questioning, is this the absolute best, robs us of the simple joy of our selection. There is a profound sense of relief in understanding this paradox. It means that the feeling of being overwhelmed in a grocery store aisle or when scrolling through a streaming service is not a personal failing. It is a predictable response to a world that often values quantity over quality and infinite choice over curated ease. It gives us permission to simplify, to seek out constraints, and to embrace the concept of good enough. The path to contentment, then, may not lie in maximizing our choices, but in voluntarily limiting them. It is in appreciating the simple sufficiency of what we have, rather than obsessing over the hypothetical perfection of what we might be missing. It is the gentle art of satisficing, finding an option that meets your needs, and then letting go of the exhausting pursuit of the elusive best. So when you feel the pressure of too many options, remember the paradox. See the abundance not as a demand to optimize, but as an invitation to clarify what you truly want. Define your criteria simply, make a choice, and then gently release the endless alternatives. They were never paths to happiness, only distractions from it. True freedom is not the abundance of options, but the ability to choose one and find peace within it. The weight lifts when we realize that we do not need to sample every flavor to enjoy the one we have. The halo effect. It is the cognitive bias that allows a single positive trait of a person, brand, or thing to cast a glow over all its other qualities, influencing our overall perception in an unfairly positive light. It is the tendency for our initial impression, often based on something as simple as physical attractiveness, perceived success, or a single moment of charm, to create a halo that makes everything else about that entity seem better than it objectively is. Imagine meeting someone who is strikingly attractive. The mind, operating on its ancient, efficient shortcuts, may unconsciously assume that this person is also kinder, more intelligent, and more competent than others. Their average joke seems funnier. Their ordinary opinion seems more profound. The halo of their appearance illuminates their every action, coloring it with a favorable hue. This same effect applies to a charismatic CEO, whose confidence can make a mediocre business strategy seem visionary, or to a beloved brand, where our positive feelings from one product lead us to assume the quality of all their others. This is not a conscious process of flawed reasoning. It is a subconscious leap, a mental smoothing over of complexity. Our brains prefer a coherent, consistent narrative. It is cognitively demanding to hold the idea that someone can be both highly attractive and also occasionally unkind, or that a successful company can still make a poor product. The halo effect resolves this tension by bending all perceptions toward a unified, positive whole. It is easier to see a saint than a complex human. Yet understanding this bias brings a deep sense of clarity and calm. It allows us to gently question our own instant judgments and admired figures. It reminds us that our perceptions are not perfect reflections of reality, but are filtered through these predictable psychological lenses. That person who seems so perfectly put together is, like everyone, a mixture of strengths and flaws. The halo simply makes the flaws harder for us to see. This awareness also offers a form of liberation from social comparison. When we see the halo effect at work, we understand that the glowing perception of others may not be entirely earned, just as our own self-critical thoughts may not be entirely fair. We are all viewed through filters, both by others and by ourselves. So we can learn to observe the glow and then look beyond it. We can consciously decouple traits, evaluating a person's competence separately from their charisma or a product's value apart from its brand name. This is not an act of cynicism, but one of deeper, more genuine engagement with the world. The halo effect teaches us that first impressions are powerful, but they are not destiny. By recognizing this gentle bias, we can strive to see people and things in their full, nuanced reality, beyond the glow. And in doing so, we make room for more authentic connections, built not on a blinding halo, but on a clearer, kinder light. The call of the void. It is that sudden, fleeting, and inexplicable impulse that arises in a moment of perfect safety. The thought that emerges from the quietest corner of the mind when you stand on a high balcony, look over the railing, and for a split second, you wonder what it would be like to jump. Or when you're driving on a long, empty highway, your hands on the wheel, and a thought whispers about the sheer force of turning it sharply just to see. It is not a desire, not a wish, and certainly not a plan. It is a bizarre and unsettling flicker of thought that is immediately followed by a recoil, a sense of, where did that come from? This phenomenon, known to the French as l'appel du vide, is not a sign of a darkening mind or a secret death wish. In fact, psychological research suggests it is precisely the opposite. It is believed to be the mind's paradoxical way of affirming life. In that moment of contemplating a drastic, irreversible action, your conscious brain recoils in horror. That recoil is a powerful, instantaneous reaffirmation of your will to live. The void calls, and your psyche answers with a firm, "No, I choose to be here." It is a strange, backhanded testament to your own safety and security. You're so far from actual danger that your mind can playfully, if darkly, simulate the alternative. It is the ultimate proof that a thought is just a thought. It holds no power in itself. These intrusive impulses are like mental static, random signals fired from the depths of the unconscious. They mean nothing more than the random images that drift through your mind as you fall asleep. They are not instructions. They are not premonitions. They are simply the mind testing its own boundaries, checking the fences of its existence and finding them strong. There is a profound comfort in this understanding. It allows you to meet these strange thoughts, not with alarm, but with a gentle curiosity. You can observe the thought of stepping off the edge, acknowledge its bizarre appearance without judgment, and then watch as it recedes just as quickly as it came, leaving in its wake a deeper, more grounded appreciation for the solid floor beneath your feet. It is your mind's way of holding up a negative to the light, showing you what is not, so you can see what is with greater clarity. So if you have ever been startled by the call of the void, you can now meet it with a soft understanding. It is not a call you need to answer. It is a call that confirms you are already home. It is the mind's quiet, strange way of celebrating the safety of the present moment by briefly and harmlessly flirting with its absence. It is the ultimate reassurance that you are exactly where you choose to be. Stockholm Syndrome. It is the psychological response where a hostage or someone in a similarly powerless and terrifying situation begins to develop a bond of empathy, sympathy, or even affection for their captor. It is a survival strategy forged in the crucible of extreme fear and dependency, a way for the mind to navigate an inescapable and unpredictable threat. The name itself comes from a 1973 bank robbery in Stockholm, Sweden, where hostages, after their release, defended the very criminals who had held them at gunpoint for days. To understand this, one must step into that state of profound vulnerability. Your survival is entirely contingent on the whims of another person. In this state, a small act of kindness, the offering of water, the withholding of a threat, is not a minor thing. It is a monumental event. The mind, seeking to reduce the terrifying uncertainty of the situation, latches onto these moments. It begins to frame the captor not as a monolithic monster, but as a complex individual who is, in this moment, showing you mercy. This cognitive shift is a refuge. Identifying with the aggressor becomes a way to gain a sense of agency, however small. If you can understand them, perhaps you can predict them. If you can please them, perhaps you can survive. This is not a conscious choice. It is an unconscious, adaptive mechanism. The mind constructs a narrative of connection to escape the paralyzing horror of being entirely at the mercy of someone who wishes you harm. In the most distorted way, the captor becomes the center of the victim's world, the source of both danger and the possibility of safety. This bond is a lifeline woven from desperation. Yet there is a quiet lesson here about the incredible resilience and adaptability of the human psyche. Stockholm Syndrome is not a pathology of a weak mind, but a testament to a mind's fierce will to survive by any means necessary, even if that means reshaping its own perceptions. It shows us that the need for human connection is so fundamental that it can persist and even intensify under the most horrific circumstances. Understanding this syndrome allows for a deeper compassion, a removal of judgment for those who experience it. It reveals that the lines between love and fear, connection and control, are far more complex and intertwined than we might comfortably believe. It is a stark reminder that we cannot always predict how we will react to extreme duress, and that the strategies of survival are not always logical from the outside. So, if you hear of such a case and feel confusion, see it not as a mystery, but as a profound adaptation. It is the mind's last resort for preserving a sense of humanity when all humanity seems lost. It is the ultimate expression of finding a sliver of light in absolute darkness, because the alternative is to be consumed by the dark entirely. The syndrome is not about love. It is about the breathtaking lengths a mind will go to in order to endure. The spotlight effect. It is the psychological tendency to overestimate how much others notice, judge, or remember our appearance and behavior. We walk through the world feeling as if we are on a stage, under a bright, unforgiving spotlight, believing that every small misstep, every flaw, every awkward moment is being keenly observed and critically evaluated by an attentive audience. In truth, that spotlight is an illusion, a trick of our own self-focused perception. Everyone else is largely the star of their own show, preoccupied with their own scripts and their own spotlights. Consider the small stain on your shirt that feels like a blazing neon sign announcing your carelessness to the world, or the slight stumble over your words in a meeting that seems to echo in the silence for an eternity. In these moments, the feeling of exposure is acute, almost painful. But if you were to ask those around you, you would likely find that most never saw the stain, and those who heard the stumble forgot it a moment later, already turning their attention inward to their own thoughts and concerns. Your perceived spotlight is, for them, merely part of the background scenery. This effect stems from a simple, unavoidable fact of consciousness. We are anchored in our own perspective. We are intimately aware of our every thought, our every insecurity, our every action. Because we are so focused on ourselves, we mistakenly assume that this same level of attention is directed at us from the outside. We forget that we are not the main character in everyone else's story. We are, at best, a supporting character, and more often, simply an extra in the scene. There is an immense and gentle freedom in understanding this. It is the permission to relax, to release the constant low-grade performance anxiety that accompanies so much of social life. It means that the embarrassing moment that plays on a loop in your mind exists almost exclusively for you. Others are far too busy replaying their own loops to have capacity for yours. This is not a statement of indifference, but of shared human experience. We are all simultaneously feeling exposed and failing to notice the exposure of others. So the next time you feel that familiar heat of the spotlight, you can gently remind yourself of its illusion. You can step out of its imagined glare and into the comforting truth that you are moving through a world of fellow self-conscious individuals, each wrapped in their own private narrative. This awareness allows you to soften your posture, to breathe more deeply, to speak more freely. It invites you to extend the same grace to yourself that you unconsciously extend to everyone else, the grace of inattention, the kindness of a distracted audience. The spotlight fades, and in its place is the quiet, liberating understanding that you are beautifully, ordinarily, and reassuringly overlooked. And in that anonymity, there is profound peace. You are free to simply be, without rehearsal, because the audience you feared was watching was always mostly just you. Gaslighting. It is a form of psychological manipulation, a slow and deliberate erosion of a person's trust in their own perception of reality. The term originates from a play and film, Gaslight, where a husband dims the gaslights in their home but insists to his wife that she is imagining it, making her doubt her own senses and sanity. It is not a simple disagreement or a lie. It is a systematic campaign to make someone question the very foundation of their experience, their memory, their judgment, and their instincts. The process is often subtle, a quiet undercurrent in a relationship. It might begin with small, deniable corrections. "I never said that." "You must have misheard me. You're remembering it all wrong." Over time, these small nudges accumulate. The manipulator presents their own version of events with such unwavering certainty that the victim's own certainty begins to crumble. They may be told their emotions are irrational, their reactions are too sensitive, that they are crazy for seeing what they see. The world becomes unstable, and the manipulator positions themselves as the sole source of clarity and truth, creating a devastating dependency. But to understand gaslighting is also to understand its profound opposite, the innate human need for a shared reality. We are social creatures who calibrate our understanding of the world through our interactions with others. We rely on external validation to confirm our internal experiences. Gaslighting hijacks this fundamental need, twisting it into a tool for control. It isolates the victim within their own mind, making them feel utterly alone in their confusion. There is a deep, quiet strength in recognizing this pattern. It is not a sign of weakness to have been affected by it. It is a testament to how deeply we are wired to trust and connect. Understanding gaslighting is the first step toward reclaiming your own reality. It's the act of gently returning to yourself, of learning to trust the quiet voice within that says, I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I know how I feel. This reclamation is a journey back to the senses. It is the practice of grounding yourself in the tangible, writing things down, confiding in a trusted friend, learning to observe the manipulator's inconsistencies without confrontation. It is about rebuilding the connection between your inner experience and the outer world, a connection that was deliberately fractured. So if you have ever felt that slow, chilling doubt creeping in, questioning your own mind, remember this: your perceptions are your rightful inheritance. Your feelings are valid data. Your reality is your own. Gaslighting reveals the darkness that can exist in human connection, but the awareness of it also illuminates the path back to the self. It is a reminder that the ultimate authority on your experience is and has always been you. And in that reclamation, there is a peace that cannot be manipulated, a quiet, unshakable certainty that you are home within yourself. The Ben Franklin effect. It is the curious psychological phenomenon where a person who has performed a favor for another is more likely to perform another favor for that same person and even develop a more favorable opinion of them. It inverts the intuitive expectation that we do favors for those we like. Instead, we come to like those for whom we have done favors. The namesake comes from a story about Benjamin Franklin, who, wishing to win over a rival legislator, did not offer him a favor, but instead asked to borrow a rare book from his personal library. The man complied, and Franklin returned it with a gracious note. Thereafter, the legislator's demeanor softened, and a friendship was formed. This counterintuitive shift occurs because our minds seek consistency between our actions and our beliefs. When we perform a favor for someone, especially someone we may be indifferent toward or even dislike, a subtle cognitive dissonance arises. The internal question forms: why would I do something nice for a person I do not like? To resolve this mental discomfort, our psyche gently adjusts our perception. It persuades us that we must, in fact, like this person more than we initially thought. Why else would we have helped them? Our actions rewrite the story we tell ourselves about our own feelings. It is a quiet, almost stealthy mechanism of the mind. The favor does not need to be significant. Lending a book, offering a small piece of advice, holding a door, these minor acts can initiate the same internal realignment. The person becomes worthy of our help, and by extension, worthy of our regard. We become invested in their well-being because we have already acted on their behalf. We have skin in the game, however small. There is a gentle wisdom in this effect, a lesson in the art of connection. It suggests that if you wish to build rapport, the most effective path may not be to give, but to gracefully and sincerely ask. It grants the other person the opportunity to be helpful, to see themselves in the role of a benefactor. In doing so, it invites them to adjust their own story about you, to cast you in a more favorable light. It is an appeal to their identity as a kind person, and we all wish to see ourselves as kind. Understanding the Ben Franklin effect can soften our view of human nature. It reveals that our affections are not always fixed, but are often shaped by our own actions. We grow to care for those we care for. It is a reminder that kindness is not merely a result of fondness, but often its cause. A single small act, a request that allows another to be generous, can quietly rewire a relationship from indifference to affinity. So if you find a relationship strained or a connection difficult to form, remember this subtle art. Do not hesitate to ask for a small favor. In doing so, you are not imposing, you are offering an invitation for them to become the kind of person who helps you, and in the process, to like you just a little more. It is a testament to the profound idea that we come to love what we invest ourselves in. And sometimes, the simplest way to gain a friend is to give them the chance to be one.